Hey everybody, it's Keegan from One Star Leather Goods. I'm coming to you from the garage shop where we make all of our goods. And I wanted to do an update about 2025, how it started, what to look for, and also give you a little bit of an update on where we stand in terms of the local wildfire catastrophes that have happened. I'll put some chapter markers down below so you can skip sections if you, just choose what to listen to. But first, I'm going to start with the fires because I think I can offer a unique perspective. Having moved to LA in 2007, been here for a long time, and I know I grew up in New England and Boston where we just didn't have wildfires. The idea of a wildfire was crazy to me. I saw the movie Bambi and it was like a wildfire. I was like, what are you talking about? If I were to throw a match in the forest in New England, it would go tss, and that would be it. And it was only moving to LA and living through and seeing the disasters up close that I was like, oh, that's what a wildfire is. That's how this stuff can happen, that I really had an understanding. So anyone that has grew up or has lived their whole life, honestly, east of Denver, you really don't have a good idea probably of what a wildfire is, how it can travel so fast, how it can be so devastating. And I'm a total nerd around this stuff. Like I'm a nerd around leather goods. I'm a nerd around anything I get involved in. And so I really go deep on this stuff. I listen to the weather experts, I listen to the fire experts, I listen to the firefighters, I listen to everybody talking about how this is possible. And so I want to enlighten some people who may not know. Feel free to skip this version if you already know, or if you don't care, and just hit the next section. So there's a couple things that have led to this current catastrophe, right? The first is Los Angeles, while it's not a desert, my mom thinks it's a desert. It's not a desert. We live in a Mediterranean climate. So for half the year we have rain, for half the year we do not have rain, right? Usually between May through October, there is literally no rain in the Los Angeles basin and in Southern California larger. And so what happened was California for thousands of years, forever, has always been sort of a land of extremes. You can have really, really wet, floody years. There used to be a giant lake in the Central Valley, right? And the last 2 years, we actually saw that lake return. The last 2 years of water, the last two water years of California, which is like October through May, that's how they measure the water year, were the wettest on record, back to back. The two back-to-back wettest years on record here. And we saw insane, large amounts of water, and that means large amounts of growth on the undergrowth, in the trees. There's just more fuel to burn. Another thing people don't necessarily know is that Los Angeles butts right up against wildlands. There's some of the steepest mountains in the country right here in Los Angeles, 25 minutes from my home. Like canyons where you'd have to rappel down and there's trees growing in gullies and stuff like that. And those wildlands come right up to areas that people live. And people live in the canyons, you get nice views, it's right near nature, but the danger you have is if a fire starts in that wildland, it can come into your neighborhood, which is what we saw here. Now, the other fact, so we had two back-to-back wet water years, which is the most growth you'll ever see. And then we've had 254 days without significant rain. Our last significant rain was May 5th. So picture literally no rain for 9 months. That's the conditions we're at now. Usually we get rain in November and December it starts, and we've had just nothing since May. So that creates a tinderbox, and it's just a ton of vegetation ready to burn in the wildlands. In people's houses, people irrigate their lawns, it's less of a deal in the urban centers. But in the wildlands, which are right next to our neighborhoods, stuff is just ready to burn. And any spark, things that happen like a chain dragging behind a car, a battery that makes a spark, a power line that has a malfunction, all these things that wouldn't usually cause fires, any of those ignition sources now are just immediately a raging fire. Then you couple that with this widespread, almost historic wind event. And what was different about this wind event was we often have what's called Santa Ana winds, which come off the desert and they go through town towards the ocean. Instead of the usual onshore flow, which brings moist air to LA region, which is why it's so comfortable in Santa Monica on the beach there. They always receive this nice ocean breeze, very similar again to the Mediterranean. But when it switches and we get winds from the desert, they're incredibly dry because they're coming off the desert. It's like a blow dryer. They're high winds and it just dries out all the vegetation and just continues to dry it out the longer the winds blow. So this event that happened on January 7th was predicted to be insanely strong and insanely widespread. All the way from Mexico to Santa Barbara, there were these crazy winds predicted. And, people saw this coming. People knew that these kind of fires were definitely a possibility. And the second thing about these particular winds is when you have a wind moving down a mountain, it can cause what's called a mountain wave. And oftentimes that mountain wave gets reflected and it stays high in the atmosphere, which means those hurricane force 100-mile-an-hour winds never reach the surface. They never reach neighborhoods. They never reach the actual sea level. And what happened in this case, the conditions were such that instead of reflecting up and staying high, and that's when you see those lenticular clouds over the mountains, instead they came racing down the mountain. And both of these fires, in the Palisades and above Altadena, the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire, started halfway up a hill. And the winds were going at 100 miles an hour down this hill towards the neighborhoods. And when you have conditions this dry, if a fire starts, I mean, I watched the Palisades fire basically start because it was on the news immediately. And once you have a spark, it's minutes before that fire is raging. I mean, picture like lighting a bonfire of pallets with your friends and think about how quickly it can catch if all that wood is really dry. So then suddenly you have this raging wildland fire, which is just packed with all this vegetation that's grown over 2 years, and now it's been blow dried to the point where it's just tinder, it's just ready to go. Any spark is gonna light it up, and you've got this raging fire, and now you have 100-mile-an-hour winds pushing it down the mountain towards your community. And then it's like you have minutes before houses are on fire because all these embers, you've probably seen it on the news, a tree, if you blow on a fire, if you blow on a campfire, you'll see it just glows and it burns really fast. And then also you can blow embers off. Well, those embers in 100-mile-an-hour winds are just being swept up to 2 miles downwind of where the fire started. So suddenly you had buildings on fire in Altadena, and then those buildings burn like crazy, and there's no way. So this is bringing me to my next point. When you have 100-mile-an-hour winds, there's no way to fight a fire. The only chance you have of stopping it is in that first couple minutes. And we could talk about resources and how do you, with hundreds of square miles of forest land coming right up to where people live, how do you patrol those places so that within minutes you can have fire trucks there or airdropping, water dropping helicopters there? That's a very different problem, and that's a whole other discussion. But once that fire starts and it's 100-mile-an-hour winds, you can't fly the water dropping helicopters because it's not safe. You can't, there's really basically nothing you can do. Once those ember storms start, 100-mile-an-hour, it looks like a blizzard. It looks like a blizzard that I'm used to from the East Coast, wind-driven snow in your headlights. It's that, but each snowflake is a glowing ember that could start a fire downwind. So once those two fires got started, there was literally no stopping them. No amount of resources could stop them. Even if you could fly a water dropping helicopter, do you know what happens when you drop water from even 20 feet off the ground in 100-mile-an-hour winds? Stick your head out of a car going 100 miles an hour. None of that water ends up where you want it to go. And the longer the winds blow, the more they dry stuff out. So that's why we saw the entire neighborhood of Altadena burn, just go house to house to house to house, because there's no stopping that. Once that wildland fire got started in that dense brush, and then it blew downhill at 100 miles an hour, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do. And the same thing with the Palisades fire. We saw a good example of what can happen when the winds aren't that strong. 2 nights later, the Sunset Fire started by Runyon Canyon above Hollywood Boulevard, and the winds were only 30 miles an hour. So immediately they just started smashing it with all these water dropping helicopters, some of which are this really cool new technology where they have all this night vision stuff set up so they can fly at night safely. And there was you could watch it on the radar, just like a bucket brigade of helicopters just dumping water, and they were able to get that fire under control. A lot of experts say that if that fire in Sunset Hills had started at the same time, or had the 100-mile-an-hour winds, it would have ripped a scar through Hollywood in the same way we saw it do in the Palisades and in Altadena. So that's a little bit about how these fires were so bad. I think it's just very hard to picture this type of event if you haven't lived in a really dry place with wildfires. It's just a possibility when you have these winds and it's this dry, if anything starts, it's impossible to stop it. And all you can do is get out of the way. And that's the other thing. It's pretty, honestly, it's miraculous that more people haven't died. It's horrible that people have lost their homes, but not a lot of people were killed. And the good thing is with a fire like this, you can get out of the way because the winds are coming in one direction, very, very at a high speed, so you know exactly where that fire could travel. And it's unlikely that the fire goes very far to either side of the direction of the wind. So that brings us to One Star Leather Goods. I'm here in the garage. There's our sign. And we are in Burbank, and this entire catastrophe, we have only had good smoke-free air. We're surrounded by about 2 or 3 miles of urbanscape on all sides, so it's very unlikely that a fire can start in the wildland area and then blow to where my house is. But if it's 100-mile-an-hour winds, any fire upwind of us, a cigarette fire, a trash can fire, a structure fire, anything could threaten us. So when we had that period of about 12 hours of the strongest winds, that's where I was on high vigilance, keeping very close track of what was happening upwind of us. But I'm happy to say that we're safe. We have numerous friends, a half a dozen friends whose houses literally burned to the dirt, and they lost cars and they lost everything. People were out of town and they didn't even have a chance to grab anything. And it's horrible. We put, there's GoFundMes that have been put together. We've collected a bunch of money and collected donations. We're doing the best we can for our community. We actually donated one of we have a really old but functional car that we donated to a friend because they lost their car and everything. So out here, we're just trying to help each other. We're just trying to help the community. But I'm happy to report that One Star Leather Goods has been safe this whole time. We've actually had the best air quality we've had in months because it's been blowing straight off the desert. And we haven't had a lot of smoke, and we're hoping that stays the way it is. We have one more wind event today, but it's not supposed to be anything like what we just saw. But this extreme fire danger will continue until we see significant rain. And there's no significant rain in the 2-3 week forecast. So, all right, so that was a little bit about the fires and how they were so destructive. I know, not living anywhere near a place that could have wildfires, it can be mind-boggling to think of how that's even possible. I hope some of this explanation helped you understand it. And now let's talk about One Star going into 2025. But we're a little behind the ball. We got cleaned out pretty well for the holidays, and plus 2 kids were home. I got 2 kids, 8 and 4, and it was bananas. And now we've had this fire, so it's the middle of January now, and we feel like we're just starting our year. But I've got a lot of good stuff to go. This is all a box of stuff to finish and list. We've got our normal products that should be in stock. I mean, if you do want to help, if you have the thought of like, oh, how can I help you during this disaster? Know that like, we have been safe. We have not lost anything. But if you want to help buy a product that's in stock, tell someone about our shop. Let them know. The second thing you can do, and I think it's really the best way going forward to know what we're releasing, what is in stock, what is not, and just be informed, is we have an email list. If you go to our website, at the bottom, you can sign up for our email list. I send like maybe 2 emails a month. It's really not, I'm not clogging your inbox. I hate that more than anybody. I'm not going to do it. But it lets you know when we release new product or when we restock. So like right now we're cleaned out of a lot of stuff and we're working on building stock as we go forward in the next couple months. And the best way to know when stuff comes into stock, because we don't make a lot, we make 3 of each color, we make 4 of each color. So stuff can go out of stock quickly if it's a popular color. If you get the email, you can hit the shop right away and be sure to get a color or a model that you're interested in. If you have specific requests, you can always contact us via email is the best way. We're still making a lot of our normal products in shell cordovan, which is, very expensive leather, very nice leather, but it's a really cool opportunity, and I'm happy to build you something, one of our designs in shell cordovan. Get in touch if that's interesting to you. So going forward, our goals are to try to keep in stock our most popular products in the most popular colors. That's what we're going to focus on for this entire year. If you have something, you're wondering if it'll come back, or if you have a question about a product, or notebook cover, or a wallet, or a belt, or you're going to have this color again, just get in touch via email. Thank you so much for supporting us, and know that we are safe from this LA wildfire disaster. If you want to know how else you can help, if you want to do something, get in touch with me. I have friends who lost their homes that have GoFundMe pages. And I can, if you want to throw some money at this to try to make it better from afar, I can tell you where to do that. So that's about all I've got to say today for this update. If you've ever purchased a product from us, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for supporting a small business. Thank you for enabling this thing to go on. We started it in 2012. We've been through a lot and we're still here, and it feels great. And I think that I love seeing used products. So if you've been carrying a wallet or a belt or something of ours for years or even just months, send me a picture, email me a picture of it. I'd love to see how the stuff wears in. Tell me the story of it. And remember, if anything ever falls apart, if your stitching pops loose, or the leather wears over, we've had people that have our stuff for 12 years and the leather starts to wear, if it's thin leather, it might wear through a little bit here. I'll replace it for free. I love knowing that you've gotten 10 years of use out of this product, and I'm happy to replace it. If your stitching ever comes apart, I'll restitch it for free. Just send it back. It brings me a lot of joy knowing that you can carry something that's beautiful, functional and durable with you, and it might bring you joy when you take your wallet out to pay at the grocery store, when you put your belt on in the morning, when you write in your journal. That's what keeps me going. I love that, and I love hearing stories of that. So please get in touch. Via email is the best way. Social media, Facebook and Instagram, I miss those messages a lot. Email is great. Thank you for tuning into this report, whatever this was, and we look forward to bringing you, more of our best-selling models. Soon we're working on restocking, and thanks for being a One Star Leather Goods fan or customer, and we'll talk to you soon.